Hi everyone, I am Chaitanya and this is my YouTube channel, Chai with Chaitanya. Here I talk about books, movies and fandoms and everything else in between. So if you're new here as much as I am, welcome. And this is my first video on YouTube, so I'm not sure if this is up to the mark or if everything is going to be as perfect and as amazing as you are used to, but I would try and improve as much as I can. And so let's get started. So the book that I am going to be talking to all of you today is a very famous title, and it was recommended to me, rather I should say forced upon me to read by my best friend Vaishnavi, who goes by the bookstagram name called @Bookish Bell 1008, and I'll be linking her down in the description box so that you guys can go follow her. And she posts amazing content, very colorful, very pretty, so I would totally recommend you to check her out after this video. And so she wanted me to read this book, and I finally decided last year, just a couple of days were left before 2020 was supposed to end, that I should definitely take this book up because it was there up on my shelf, and I did, and I'm so glad. So the book is obviously none other than Sarah J. Maas's The Court of Thorns and Roses, and I am so thankful that I started my journey with Sarah J. Maas with this book, because I haven't read anything from the author before. And even though I've heard about The Throne of Glass, I had heard about this series, I had also heard about Crescent City, but I never really got into one of her fandoms or any of her books, because I'm not a person who reads a lot of fantasy in general. But ever since I read this, I think my life definitely changed for the better, and I was instantly pulled into this world. And I'm now going to be talking a little about the book and what it deals with, the synopsis, the summary, and what I feel about it. And I would be trying to make this as non-spoilery as possible. And once I get into the spoilery section, I will be giving a warning so that you guys can know and stop watching if you don't want to watch the spoilery section. So let's get started. So initially this book starts with the main character Feyre, who you can see on the cover. She is a mundane, she's a human, she's a mortal like us, and she lives in this world where she has to take care of her family, which comprises of two of her elder sisters and her father, who completely depend upon Feyre for everything in their lives. They are poor, they barely make ends meet, so Feyre has to go out and hunt every day for her family to bring food in. And one of these days she ends up killing this huge giant ass wolf, who she suspects is probably a fairy, but she's not so sure until one of the coming days, the High Lord of the Spring Court, which is Tamlin, comes up to her house, and poses the ultimate choice in front of her. That is that because of the wolf that she killed, and it happened to be a fairy, she now has to either lay down her life or join Tamlin in the Spring Court for the rest of her life. So the whole discussion around a life for a life comes into play, and obviously Feyre, being the main protagonist of this book, she has to make the choice to join the other character, which is Tamlin, into his world, and that's sort of where our story actually begins. And once Feyre enters Prithian, which is the world that is on the other side of the wall, on one side you have the mortal world where Feyre used to live and other humans like Feyre used to live, and on the other side is Prithian, which is the land of the immortals and fairies and all of these weird magical creatures. So once she enters there, she gets to know about the 7 courts, and even though much of this book deals only with the Spring Court until the very end, where you have mentions of one of the very controversial court, which later becomes very important, I have been told, which is the Night Court, and the High Lord of Night Court, which is Rhysand, also comes into the picture. But all of that a little later. So Feyre finds herself in a position where she isn't very happy, she isn't very content with being there. So she's trying to find out loopholes and trying to get back to her family, because she knows that her family needs her desperately, as she was the only person they could have truly dependent on. And while multiple attempts bring her to the same conclusion that she cannot go back, she finally accepts her fate and starts to explore the Spring Court in a way so that she can probably start to live out the days of her life in a more peaceful manner. And it was during those times that Feyre understands and realizes that the idea that she carried about the immortals and fairies, that is, their lives are supposed to be beautiful and all amazing because they have years and years to live, isn't very true, because all their lives are currently being held captive, or you can say they are constantly at the threat of this dark magic, which they refer as the Blith. And who is setting this magic or what exactly is happening isn't very clear in the beginning, and you will get to read about it as soon as you move towards the second act of the book, towards the end of the second act. And soon enough you'll see that Feyre finds herself in a position where she is the only person who can probably save herself, Tamlin, and also the other people of his court and much of the Spring Court in general, including Prithian as the entirety of the land. So that is more or less what this book deals with, and it's very adventurous, it's very enchanting, the world is beautiful to read, and the characters sort of stand out in their own ways, one more than the other. And I would totally recommend this to anybody who's looking forward to a good fantasy read, which is not very, very difficult like a high fantasy, and who's also looking forward like a slow burn romance, because romance is also a great part of this book between Feyre and Tamlin, and that is definitely one of my favorite parts, despite of the fact that it is very controversial. And but yeah, much of that again later. And yes, so that was the non-spoilery section. So now I would be moving in and discussing the world building, the characters, what I liked, what I disliked, and my overall opinion of this book, which may contain mild to major spoilers. So you have been warned. If you want to go ahead and watch that section, watch after this, please proceed with your own risk. So talking about the world building, I think that Sarah J. Maas has done a beautiful work. As I said in the beginning of this video, I'm not a person who truly enjoys or reads a lot of fantasy. And one of the major reasons is that I find it extremely difficult to get into a world which is very complicated. For example, I read Six of Crows last year, and despite all the major hype, I just did not like it as much as I thought I would like it. And a part of that was because I was just not very comfortable with the words and the terminologies, and just the less number of information given out to how the magic system works and everything else in between. So with this book, I did not face that particular problem. I found that everything was described at great length. It wasn't too much, it wasn't too less, and she laid out the groundworks of most of these things very well. Another thing that really worked in the favor of this book was the fact that it's written in the first person. So most of the times you're reading Feyre, who is as new to the fairy world as you are as a reader. And I think that helps get acquainted with the world, with the character herself, because you truly do not know more than what Feyre knows. And because what Feyre knows is what you know, because that is how you are reading the story, I think that just sort of simplifies and eases down the whole thing a lot, in my opinion. Also talking about the characters, I definitely did like Feyre. She's very fierce, she's independent, she's bold, she is brave, she can make her own decisions, she knows how to fight, she knows how to stand tall even at times of great adversity or even at times of great danger. So all of those are amazing traits, and traits which happened for me to like her. But then there were things that she did in this book, choices specifically that she made towards the end of the book, which really made me question the kind of motives or the kind of person that she is. Not that she's a bad person, but then I just felt personally that the choices that she makes a lot of times are very out of her character. And again, I haven't read the other books. I've just started reading the second book, which is A Court of Mist and Fury. So I'm not sure how it will pan out, because obviously this is a series, so you have to read the other books in order to understand the overall character. But if I just talk about this specific book, I did like the character, but I was not very sure of how I felt about her by the end of the book, because she does some very questionable things according to me. Speaking of Tamlin, I absolutely liked his character, and yes, I know that's very controversial because a lot of people have gone ahead and they have discussed at great lengths at how Tamlin is very problematic, and there are tons of red flags, and I did. Notice those red flags. I have them all highlighted and marked out in my book itself while I was reading. But I think I understand the things that he did, and while this is not a justification for the things that he carried out or the things that he did, but I can still say and vouch upon the fact that I can still agree and see that why his character did the things that he did. And I might not agree to all of them, but I don't really mind even if he did that. So I know how controversial that sounds, but then that is just how it is, and that is just how my opinion of this book is. Also, I truly loved Lucian's character. I found him to be of great help, and not only to Feyre, but also as a character who was very fun and lively and enjoyable to read. His banter with Feyre as well as with Lucian was very interesting, and I always looked forward to more of his story. And one of the only characters that I did not enjoy as much as I thought I would enjoy, based on what I was told by other people who are absolutely massive fans of this fandom, was the character of Rhysand. And that is, when he actually arrived in the book, I could understand that it's him, but when he's finally introduced to us in the Amrantha or Amrantha, whichever way you choose to pronounce it, and the way he deals with Feyre and whatever choices that Feyre makes in order to save Tamlin herself and the entirety of Prythian, just felt very manipulative to me at the end of the day. And I'm not sure if that is again how Rhysand is as a character, because I haven't spent enough time with him to be able to understand him. But I did not enjoy him as much as I thought I would, and I definitely would pick him over. I definitely would not pick him over Tamlin. Sorry, I said the other way around. And again, I am open to changing my views, because this is just based on the first book, as I said, and I'm just reading the second book. So I will definitely be making the book review for the second book and talking to you guys about what I feel at the end of the second book, and then after the third book and after the fourth book. So yeah, that's more or less what I thought about the characters. Another thing that you should know about this book is that it's based off on a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and if you do not know before going into this book that it is the Beauty and the Beast retelling, then you probably would not be able to figure it out until the later of the second act of this book, which isn't very great, because I personally I'm a huge fan of the Beauty and the Beast, and Beauty and the Beast is one of the many stories that childhood stories that I keep going back to, and I love reading retellings of it. But this book just did not stand out for me in terms of a retelling. So if you're someone who is going into this book only for the purpose of reading a Beauty and the Beast retelling, I wouldn't recommend this book to you. I'm sorry, but this is just how it is. And finally, my problems with this book. There was just one problem that I faced consistently, and that was that Sarah J. Maas uses a lot of expositionary narrative in this book. And by that I mean that a lot of information about the world or about certain elements which should have come out slowly or gradually, or should have come out in a different way, just came out straight off through dialogues. And that way of giving out information is just not appreciated a lot in books and also in movies, and I'm not sure why she did that. And in particular, I'm talking about those of you who have read the book, or those of you who will read the book. I'm talking about the 4 or 5 page long dialogue exchange between Alis, the Fae who used to work as a household at Tamlin's Spring Court and used to look after Feyre, and between her and Feyre when Feyre returns from her world to save Tamlin, and she finds that Amarantha has completely destroyed the Spring Court, and she's taken Tamlin and most of the people captive under the mountain. And then that is the time when she reveals most of the curse to Feyre. And I think that the entire conversation just felt very on the face, and it could have been done better and dealt better, but it just wasn't. And there were other instances also where I found that a lot of things were just spoken out a lot through dialogues, when I would have loved if it would have been told to me through more of other stuff, like, just not with dialogues, because that just makes it very direct, and it questions my integrity as a reader to understand things and pick up things as and when I read. So that was the only complaint that I have with this book. And beyond that, I think I would definitely recommend this to anybody, as I said, to anybody who's looking for a good fantasy read, a good escapist read, a good romance read, because the romance in this book is also pretty amazing, even though it's like a very slow burn romance, but it's still good. And I cannot categorize it as the enemies to lovers or haters to lovers, but it sort of follows that trope. So if you're looking for that trope in fantasy, I think this book would be a nice fit for it. And beyond that, I would like to give this book a rating of 3.5 to 4 stars, because I'm not sure what is the final rating, because I haven't read the other books in the series, and I'm a huge believer that I cannot finalize my rating based only of reading one book in a series. So I would be telling you guys what my final verdict is after I'm done reading all the books of this series. And that's about it. So if you like this video, do give it a thumbs up, and whatever your comments are, if you agree, if you disagree, I would love to hear about all your opinions, your views about Tamlin, your views about Rhysand, about Feyre, or anybody else, or anything else in general. Feel free to comment below, and subscribe to this channel if you liked my video, or if you want to see more of my content, and share it if you can, because that would be very amazing. You can also find me on my Bookstagram, Chai with Chaitanya, which the link would be below, and also on my WordPress blog, for which the link would also be below. So thank you and have a great day. I would be back soon with another review. Bye.